you doing? Doing all right? Good to see you. Oh, no problem.
Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. The Reverend Stephen Cousin makes New Haven tick in ways both spiritual and otherwise. He's the pastor of Bethel AME Church, the city fire commissioner, and stalwart of too many community efforts to mention, because we have only an hour here, folks. He's here in the WNHH studio to weigh in on some trying times in New Haven. Thanks for coming in, Reverend Cousin.
Oh, thank you again, Paul, for having me.
Thanks, and it's great to have you back. And I always remind you when we start to get real close to that mic, like you're almost touching it, or bring it closer to you so we can hear you loud and clear. I'm going to thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So you are the spiritual leader of one of our most renowned and sort of established African-American congregations right in town, Bethel AME Church.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes.
And I always love going there. I was there for one event recently. Got a great congregation. You do a lot in the community. And you have a leadership position. You're on city boards and commissions. You speak out a lot. And so how do you feel about the political moment we're in now? After a primary that was rough, the way primaries are, all elections are, a lot of sore feelings. And now in the aftermath, I guess we thought the campaign was over for mayor, but apparently it's not. Mayor Harper's sort of running, sort of not. Depends on the day. And she has a group of supporters who are working very hard to get people to vote for her in general election on the Working Families Party ballot. Justin Elicker won the primary, and he's on the Democratic ballot. How do you see the community reacting to this?
Politics at any level is going to be very sensitive from anybody who is involved, whether it be financially, mentally, physically involved in any campaign.
Right. Some people have money at stake, a job at stake. Other people have ideals at stake. When people are in campaigns, I find that they get very convinced, and it's good that people get involved in politics. They care about their community. People get so convinced on all sides that their side is completely right about everything. The other side becomes evil by the time a campaign is over. Well, and they see it through that lens and get very upset at the other side.
I look at it as where, just like you said, you pour your heart and your soul into in the campaign, and you feel like not only did your candidate lose, but you lost. And the people rejected you as well. You know, where
so it's personal,
where your opinion does not matter, or your ideals are not going to be brought forward to the table.
And then if you've convinced yourself that it's so important that your candidate win because so much is at stake, then you kind of feel like horrible things are going to happen when the other one gets in.
You feel that everybody's going to get fired, and you know, you're not going to have a place at the table. Your voice is not going to be heard. So there's a lot of uncertainty, especially when you're on the losing end of things, where now you're asking yourself the question, where do you stand?
Hey, I'm one of those Americans who, after the last presidential election, believe that we are dangerously heading towards some kind of Armageddon or fascism. And I work with someone who's a wonderful guy, Harry Jokes, who's a big Donald Trump fan, who thinks that we're all exaggerating. And look, you're still coming to work every day and fine. So I can relate to that, even though I wasn't involved in that election. Even though I don't feel that way about city elections, I still do feel every day like I'm very scared about the future of this country.
Well, and I think our politics today has become so divisive.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it seemed like after every election, we're always talking about reconciliation and healing and bringing people together. And we talk about it, but do we really see it? And that's really where the challenge lies, where there should be a time that after an election, both sides can come to the table, find some common ground, and work on the issues that are pertinent and prevalent in our communities.
And sometimes that's self-interest. You know, it's kind of interesting. We had a very bitter election in 2001. It was on 9/11, Democratic primary. Martin Looney and John Stefano, very hard fought for months, very bitter. But then 9/11 happened on 9/11, which was primary day, and it kind of threw everybody for a loop. And that next day, the two of them were together at a public event, even though there were hard feelings, you know, sort of saying we got to come together. And then sometimes there's self-interest. So when Ben DeLito won a very bitter primary in 1979, one of the first things his administration did was try to pay off the opponent. They hired Frank Logue as a consultant, and one of his key people is the lawyer. So there are sort of other factors at play. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, from me, especially being the pastor of Bethel Church, I've had members who support Tony Harp, and I have members who support Justin
I
Elliker.
guess what blew me away was I was at your church in the campaign. Don't worry, I'm not going to
Mm.
divulge confidences. I was shocked that the experienced political African American people came up to that day and unprovoked told me they were going to vote for Justin Elliker. This was months before the election. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? And, we all try to be smarty pants political pundits in the press. We usually miss it. It really took me until the week before the election to realize how unenthused the black vote was for an African American mayor,
Well,
which I think was the story of the election, which was that her vote really tanked in the black community. And Justin Elliker, a white person without a lot of history in the community, got so many more votes from people who for decades have been voting for Tony Harp. And that our first inkling was in your church.
well, and for me, I think that we take the black vote for granted.
Hmm.
Where I believe that there are some political pundits who believe that African Americans vote as one block.
See, I
Whoever.
don't believe that, but I believe when you have an experienced woman who's had a successful career running against a white person who hasn't had a lot of history in those communities, that I think is a slam dunk. Like
Well,
in the Obama election, I knew that like Jews and African Americans were going to line up around the corner for that one,
but I
but it's not
think,
always true.
it goes to show that experience does not really matter in these past elections.
Mm.
Where you remember when Obama ran, he was a freshman senator.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
there was a commercial with Hillary Clinton about who do you feel comfortable with at the 3 a.m. phone call, Obama or her. She ran on her experience. She lost.
It's kind of funny that Kamala Harris is running that one now, and she doesn't have the experience, and the experience she has doesn't really
and
excite people.
and
Yeah.
even Donald Trump, in 16, where there's no shadow of a doubt that I believe Hillary Clinton was the more experienced candidate. Donald Trump never ran or held in a political office, and yet now he is in the highest position in the United States of America. So,
And we're watching like what happened with Syria with the Turks yesterday. Wow.
but I think that we take for granted, the experience. I think that people don't care about that
Mm.
right now. I think they're looking for it's different. It's not the same run in the mill because people relate experience to those who are more polished as a skillful politician. And I don't
And
think.
I guess that was the double whammy on Tony Harp because he's a very skilled legislator, very skilled political thinker, very skilled policy person, and really not that strong on the trenches of politics. Asking people to vote for her and convincing her and getting a campaign team that's going to really be shrewd.
And I think for her, the work that she has done in the city has been amazing and phenomenal. And I've had the privilege to serve on, as a fire commission and serve, in the police and fire pension fund. And just to see how she operates in that particular meeting with the pension fund, where she really understands the city's resources, our finances, and where we needs to go. I just think that gets lost in the communication to people
Yeah.
because people just want to see the overall scheme. Just
And
tell me.
she's not a macho male. I mean, she doesn't go around saying, I'm the center of the universe and here are all the great things I've done. So then when she had to finally talk about her accomplishments, people felt she went to the other extreme, which was ignoring, just like anyone in any office has things that went well and things that didn't. I would argue that her first 4 years, they went a lot better than not. And then the last term, they didn't. We could have different opinions on that. But people weren't buying it when all of a sudden she's saying everything is perfect. Like we're getting graduation scores up, and they're so upset about all these other things that are going on in the schools. It was kind of a hard last minute sale.
Well, I think that people still vote based on their wallets.
Mm.
Where I still believe that people did not get over the tax increase.
Yeah, the 11%.
And as a taxpayer myself, I have to spend an additional $1,200, a year in my property taxes. Where right now my mortgage on a monthly basis is the same amount I pay in taxes in a monthly basis.
Same here, yeah. But I got a good price in my house.
So I thought I did too. So, but and I think where people voted on their wallets, where
there's no question that 11% hurt her, and I felt that was unfair too. I'll tell you why, Reverend Cousin. is that it's so hard to talk intelligently about taxes. So we have a 2-year mayoral term. So no mayor raises taxes on an odd number year because they're running for reelection. So it gets backed up. And then New Haven, unlike other cities, did not plan for a tough state legislative years when they weren't going to get all the aid they thought they were going to get. So that started a spiral. The Hart administration blamed Martin Looney publicly. That broke that relationship. He's a state senator. And then the 11% came at once rather than over years. And then you had all these big raises for her staff, which I felt weren't big raises. They hadn't gotten raises for 6 years, but because of the way the city works, they don't get raises until the management union, they're not unionized, gets their raises. So they had to wait years to get them. So it was a public relations nightmare, hard to explain. But then when you get something that really, I believe, is going to affect your wallet more, Reverend Cousin, is that we did something really dangerous that John DeStefano tried to do as mayor, but the independent and some alders at the time named Darnell Golston and Justin Ellicker stopped in 2011, which is they tried to scoop and toss. They tried to borrow a lot of money now so that they didn't have to raise taxes and then leave the city with a much bigger bill later on when they're no longer mayor. They tried to do that by selling parking tax meter revenue. It was basically a loan, and that got stopped. So then Mayor Harp, after she got beat up for the 11%, did this scoop and toss, which is what drove Hartford to the brink of bankruptcy. And before they got bailed out, and nobody cared. $160 million. You're never supposed to borrow for operating expenses. And no one cared. If she had done that at the beginning and just borrowed away our future a year earlier than she did it, I think she would have been reelected. And that's frustrating to me about the electorate. Because the truth is, if those tax increases had been factored in, you wouldn't have felt you're paying $1,200 more. You would have went up a little more, but thank God I'm not in West Haven, Hamden. Those went more. And then you thought, oh, my taxes didn't go up. Great, because they're going to go up 5 times as much in 5 years.
Well, you hit the nail on the head where a mayor has to really run every other year.
Yeah, it's messed up.
And you don't, Bridgeport, Hartford, you're given 4 years. And it's very hard to govern when you're always running.
Yeah.
And you always have these decisions. You know, you're trying to find the perfect window to do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that won't hurt you during the election. I really believe that's not fair that every other year you have to run.
So you're saying it leads to short-term decision making?
Short-term decision making where we really can't think long-term because you're always thinking about the next election.
Yeah.
And what am I going to do to get reelected? And it is very hard where you really, in my opinion, you only have truly 6 months to govern.
Yeah.
And then you're spending the next 18 months trying to run.
Yeah.
Even though you're not physically running per se, but that's in the back of your mind now. What can you do to make sure that you stay in office?
Yeah, though I would argue if I were ever a mayoral advisor, I'd say throw that on its head. Just ignore it. Just do a great job and do a great job explaining it every day. But, you know, that's a different
But
way to
it's
think of
it's hard because you need somebody every day to actually communicate what you're doing to the press and to
And you
the
got great
people.
tools where you can bypass the press now. I know this is great conversation. We're having the conversation with Reverend Cousin, who, besides being the leader of Bethel LME Church, is, in my opinion, one of the most incisive political observers in town. And we're doing that on Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live stream newhaven.org. William, Gage, Nadine, thanks for checking in. It's great to talk to you. So, what now? You're saying that elections are by their nature divisive. People, Tony Harp supporters, feel very burned because they were criticized a lot by Justin Ellicker. Justin Ellicker's camp points out that much more vicious, in my opinion, attacks came from Tony Harp. We had Lee Atwater type ads making up stuff about drones coming into poor neighborhoods. But either way you look at it, it was divisive. People's hurts feeling. Is it still divisive? How's the mood now in the community?
Mood is still divisive in my
And
opinion.
why is that?
Because we still have, two candidates that are running.
Do we?
Well, the mayor, for her part, she has done everything right. I think she's respecting the Working Families Party line by staying on the ballot.
But they didn't want her to stay on.
Well, they're not supporting her,
Yeah.
in terms of financially or, man or woman power to go door knocking, what have you. They said they want to put other resources in other, elections.
Yeah.
But she's still able to stay on the ballot. So I think she's still respecting that. She suspended her campaign officially. Also, she set aside or requested $75,000 for the transition team.
Yeah.
So she's doing
That was responsible because
she
she said, he might be the mayor. We want to make sure you got your team.
So it's not like she's not taking the proper steps.
Well, do you think people get a clear message? Because she gave the green light to her supporters to form a PAC, a political action committee, with a very visible presence to keep the campaign going. They are delivering literature. They had an event this week for her. It was supposed to be a tribute. She said, I'm still on the ballot. It's up to you now. And then someone stood up and said, everyone sign up in the back to make phone calls and knock on doors. She has a fundraiser scheduled by her campaign that she supposedly suspended in a week at a wealthy doctor's house in Woodbridge. Is that doing everything right and suspending the campaign, or is it giving a mixed message?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, where you can't stop people from organizing.
You can't say, I'd rather you don't do this in my name.
To me, I think that would be disrespectful for them. You can say it,
But
that
they
doesn't
asked her
mean.
what she wanted, and she didn't say stop. What if she said, because she had a lot of other supporters who did want her to stop, and some supporters who didn't want her. Some supporters wanted her to keep going. At least as many didn't want her to keep going. I think she had every right to keep going. I mean, I'm not saying she shouldn't have kept going. But I'm saying, has there been a clear message? Because she said to one side or the other. She basically picked. She picked the side to keep going.
Well, I think for her, you could look at it either or. Depends on what side you fall on.
Yeah.
Where on my side, I can say that she has stopped because of her making transitions to for whoever the next mayor may be. There may be other sides that are saying that,
But you can untransfer that money. You don't have to spend that money.
but it's there. At least she put the formal
Yeah.
request in,
Yeah, that was a good move.
so it is there. But for that the grassroots organization that's going, and let's be honest. Justin Elliker was going to run.
Oh, in the general. Yeah, this
in
isn't
the
a moral
general.
thing. He was going to run as a third party candidate if he didn't get, or independent candidate if he
So
didn't win the primary.
so it was
Right.
it
There's
was
no
going to
moral
happen.
question here. Nobody has a right to deny a woman, especially an incumbent, to run if she's on the ballot.
But I think for her, for giving 32 years of service, 6 as an alder, 20 as a state senator,
21.
21
Don't cheat her out of
I
year.
will not cheat her out
Okay.
a year, Paul.
I just
And
want to
then
make sure you're
6
not doing any theft here.
and currently 6 as our mayor. I think that she has the right.
Oh,
really
everybody
to-
has a right.
to-
It'd be
to-
right if she didn't. Yeah.
But for me, as a member of the Democratic Party, I've said this publicly and I said it privately, where we cannot say as a party support the one who wins the primary and then back off for the general.
Mm-hmm.
Where the same argument in 13 when our mayor won in 13.
She won the primary.
She
and then
won the
a lot
primary.
A lot of white Democrats voted for Justin Elliker in the general.
But in the general, there was an
As
argument that
independent.
Justin
Yeah.
needs to step down. I think that this whole process is showing us where we really need to have an in-depth conversation about how we view our Democratic Party. Because I've only been here for 6 years.
Really? Well, you know a lot more than people been here 60.
So, you know what, the way it feels, it can be 60. But 2013, we had a primary. Granted, it was 4 people running, and then in general, it came down to 2. In 15, we didn't have anybody. Mayor Hartbrand unopposed. 2017, it was her and Paca.
And then Packer sort of ran the general. He also said he suspended his campaign, but then he said still vote for me.
And he still received votes.
Yeah.
Even though he suspended his campaign, he still received, I think, over like maybe 1,000 votes.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are in 2019, that we knew that no matter what happened in the primary, there was going to be some type of general election. And my issue has always been for persons to use the Democratic platform to seek the nomination at the convention and then petition to get on the ballot for the primary. And even if you lose the primary, you could still file 3 weeks before we have our primary.
Yeah.
To actually file as an independent for the general. What does that say about the Democratic Party?
Now, just to be accurate, Tony Hart was on this radio station saying, I will not run in the general if I lose the primary because I'm a Democrat. He did say that.
And think about it, she suspended her campaign officially. And even though that she's still on the ballot for the working families, she's not
So you supported Tony Hart very visibly in her primary this year. You spoke at her campaign opening. Who are you supporting in the general?
As a member of the Democratic Party, and it'll be hypocritical of me. I've always said this. As I said, I have friends on both sides of the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter
Will
what
you
I
still?
do,
Is it possible to have friends both sides of the aisle after an election?
yeah, you know, I think what we lost is civility in our
Mm-hmm.
political discourse. We're being able to come together and have a conversation and see what can we do moving forward. But as a member of the Democratic Party, I've always said that we have to support the Democratic primary
So you're
nominee.
endorsing Justin Elicker in the general.
I am supporting the process of the Democratic Party. And as of right now, Justin Elicker is the primary, the nominee. He is the nominee for the Democratic Party.
So you're
So
supporting
you, my opinion, I may lose friends, but I lost friends on both sides. And
him.
this is coming from a person where on primary day, where I had a Justin Elicker supporter called me a wolf in sheep's clothing.
That person has already sent in a question to ask you about the status of the lease for the escape program. So we'll get to
They,
that. We'll get to that later. And we will.
so
Thanks for the question.
you
Yeah.
you know
It's
for
hard to be
that.
that. I've been called. I've had. I'm Jewish, and I've been getting anti-Jewish stuff coming back to me from the Hart
uh,
people, blaming the Jewish media for her loss,
and and
which is
and,
really upsetting.
and it's hard. It's really difficult. But I would have said the same thing, and I would be saying the same thing if Mayor Hart would have won the primary. That we need to support the Democratic.
Do you think he'll be a good mayor
Only time will tell.
if he wins?
If he wins, only time will tell. I mean,
Do you feel anything positive about Justin Elicker and you supporting him, or is it only because he got the primary victory?
I think that people are going to have to find out that it's very different to govern than it is to campaign. Where campaigns, you can say anything you want. And then once you're actually in that seat and you realize everything that goes in it,
Yeah.
I think that is a huge learning curve. And we don't know. That's why I said only time will tell about who will
Well,
be a
would you be
great mayor.
supporting him if he won the primary and you thought he'd be a bad mayor?
I believe that Mayor Hart was the better candidate.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why I support her. It had nothing to do with Justin, his ideas or his vision. I just believe that, Mayor Hart was the better candidate for what she has brought to the city, what she has done for the city. I thought that with her vision and her ideas aligned more with mine than it did with his.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for national politics when people talked about between Bernie and Hillary, where, my ideas aligned more with Hillary. But if Bernie would have won, I would have supported him because
Yeah, I did the reverse. I'm not. I don't consider myself a Democrat, but I was a big Bernie person. I thought it was fine to have Hillary as the candidate. I actually cared about the experience.
Bill.
I know you said people don't get experience. I really thought that she knew how to deal with world leaders and knew how to make decisions in the government. Yeah.
my wife loves watching Bill Maher, and Bill Maher always said during that election, if you can't get the chicken, get the fish. And you know, um, this is just where we are.
And if you can get Dateline New Haven on WNHHFM, that's what you listen to now with Reverend Stephen Cousin on NewHavenIndependent.org. And thanks for listening to us. So, Reverend Cousin, you say there's been divisiveness. Why has it continued? Because people aren't certain that the race is over? Because the mayor is still.
Well, it's not over.
So we can't heal until it is.
I believe that you're going to have to see this process play out. No matter if you like it, don't like it, hate it, what have you. I think that you have to allow and respect the process to play out.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens on November 5th, we'll see. What.
Well, you talked about one issue. You feel we need a 4-year term. What's
Yes.
interesting about that is, so I've always felt that, but I also recognize that kind of makes me an elitist. And Angie Down, we are going to get to your question. I promise. We're just dealing with different segments of this program. We will get to the escape. I've always felt that gets you to have more chance to make responsible long-term decisions, and you shouldn't always be running for office. It keeps getting voted down by committees doing charter revision where it would need to happen. Their idea is that that's anti-democratic. That it's good if the public gets every 2 years to say you're on the right track or not. There are a lot of issues that add up to if you're on the right track. So we want our democracy rather than elites saying you should be protected from the will of the voters and not you should be having the pressure not to make a decision they don't like. And what I come back with is long-term decisions are important too, and that in a representative democracy, we don't take a poll every time someone we elect makes a decision. We They have all the resources and time and expertise and aids to try to figure out an issue. And we vote on who we think will do best with that, but we don't vote on it every 7 seconds. We give them some time to compile a record and then we weigh in. But I do have to recognize that it usually is elite people who want that 4 year term and sort of grassroots Democrats who want to be able to vote every 2 years.
Well, and for me, I strongly believe you cannot govern the size of this city in 2 year terms.
Mm-hmm.
Where just like you stated, everything is done short term. And you really can't have a full vision if you make a decision and you need to see immediate results.
Yeah.
Like the trip to China per se, where that was a big sticking point for voters. Where who knows, maybe 7-8 years down the road, a business will come to New Haven because of the trip.
Can I give you my 2 cents on that? Because I'm very opinionated on this. I think it's great she went to China. And I don't think we need to wait years to say anything. I think the act of the trip is what I want my public officials to do. China is the biggest growing economy in the world. And when you're running a city, you need to have a perspective that's bigger than yours. Public officials all the time go to other countries to learn and make ties. She brought Albertus Magnus there to make connections to build up their universities. We have historic commissions with institutions there. She brought Taisha Walker Myers, the president of the Board of Alders, which I thought was the best move because she runs our legislative body and she has a lot of talent and she is homegrown and she got to see another part of the world and meet. They met Carrie Lam, who's doing the whole Hong Kong thing now. I mean, and you're right. They talked to a lot of businesses who might come there, and someone came months later. But the public, I believe that's a different problem in our public process, and maybe I'm a villain in this too with the media, is that you can get people upset with a simplistic view of something, feed into prejudices about people spending your money wrong and not. But I don't know if that's the 2 versus 4 year term. Because they did get people here months later. But even if they hadn't, Ed Koch went there as the mayor of New York and came back with the idea about bicycles. They're doing interesting stuff in China, including bad stuff and good stuff. And we're nation states now in a world economy. So I hated the attacks she got for going to China. And I don't think that's about the 2 year term.
Well, here's what I would say about the 2 year term in relation to China. If a business would have came 3 months after she went,
they were here looking at space at District
but
3 months later.
Coming here and actually having a business, that's what people wanted to see. It's okay to have, a visit, but where's the revenue coming from?
And I would argue that not everything is dollars and cents right away.
But that's what I'm talking about.
But you're right. It would have been much better if right away they signed a deal. It's just the world doesn't work that way.
That's long-term planning.
Yeah.
And
I see what you're saying.
Long-term investment.
So maybe there's a chance that in 2 years she could have said.
And this is the fruits of that visit.
But like just for 2 cents, my property taxes, and I don't like paying a lot of taxes. I would happily pay for taxes to go to China. I'm happily paying taxes for a police officer to escort a black woman mayor at a time where we're having terrible racist violence, crazy violence in this country. And when white male mayors and black had police escorts in years for New Haven, our congresswoman for 30 years has had a police escort. So I think there was really fair criticism at Mayor Harp. I think it was really unfair.
And we're talking about the unfair criticism regarding the police escort.
That was just sexist and racist.
But that wasn't her idea.
Well, that's what they say.
It was Police Chief Esserman at the time.
I don't want people shooting my mayor. Whoever, even if I vote against the mayor, I don't want them getting shot.
But this is what I'm talking about. Long term. Yeah. And investments and what people actually see and how they respond and what we do, where if you have more time to plan I think that you'll be able to see the fruits of your labor. But we do live in a right now economy where even though
Yeah,
like if you
yeah,
look at Amazon with the fulfillment centers,
yeah. You're right.
where you click something and it better be
That's
there the
so good
next
point.
day,
Yeah.
or we're going to have a problem. Where long term planning is really put to a back burner
And the
because
corporate sector too. Their quarterly results. So now there's this movement not to go to public with companies because the public companies, unless they're a majority of shares owned by the founders and the management, they want quarterly results. And the best economic planning looks for years long results in investment.
you need at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Even on the pension fund for the investments that we make, we have to look at it as a 6 year cycle.
Yeah.
We just can't, if the stock is doing bad within the first 6 months, we don't abandon it, but we really have to wait to see how it plays out long term.
So Maritza Casanova Spell says, thank you for listening, and I agree that time will tell. Tony Harp's 6 years spoke volumes and why the New Haven community wanted her out. Okay, thank you for your comment. Reverend Cousin, you said you got some flack now for not supporting her. Who's giving you, what kind of flack you getting? I don't
Yeah,
mean names. I
I
mean, like,
mean,
you said one
well,
person called you some mean names.
well, that was like in somebody who supported Justin
Oh,
Elliker.
okay. So you got flack from Elliker's people first.
But even when Justin Elliker showed up my church, um, and as I said, Bethel Church is nonpartisan. Bethel
Right. So
Church
even though
is
you're
not
supporting
endorsed.
Tony Harp, you had the other candidate there to speak.
But that's what I'm supposed to do because, as I said, you have supporters in my congregation who support both candidates.
Yeah.
And for me, in my position of leadership, to deny a
Did
person
Mayor Harp come
access,
too?
yes, absolutely. She came the following Sunday,
Oh, I wish
and
your campaign had let us know.
yeah, and she spoke. And so, I would have done it for Ern. I would have done it for Wendy. All they had to do was just come and
So
ask
what
me.
about now? Have you gotten any blowback on the other side?
And I mean, right now, after their primary, I was basically in bed for a week.
Oh, what happened?
No, just really, hurt. Just really just we talked about earlier about emotions and asking what's
Oh, you were
next.
sad that she lost.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like you fight for somebody or you try to fight for somebody and your candidate lose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you feel like you're being rejected too.
Mm.
And so, I was hurt, by the election. But as with anything, you go through the process, you try to reason with it, grapple, and then you adapt and you move on, so to speak. And you just try to figure out, okay, what's the next step? And I think that, for, this political time, that whoever's going to be our mayor, um, really having the sense that not everybody is going to agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is going to like what you say or what you do, but you have to bring people to the table and to make sure that at least the voices are heard.
J. Juan Carter says, charter revision, 4-year mayoral term, alders should not need 2 or more jobs to sustain a living. Those are sentiments that I know that I agree with. J. Juan, thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. So what can we, is there anything we can do to heal? Is this could be time? Do we take it too personally after an election? Like, I know I'm worn out after the election that both sides, get very mad at the press and they always blame the messenger. And it's an old trope, and it is sometimes anti-Semitic, but not only, where they're just mad if things go wrong. It's the press's fault for reporting it. It's been a lot of viciousness after this campaign, a lot of attacks on people,
I mean, you could say that during any election cycle.
Yeah. So do you think it will just get over it? You think New Haven's not going to be harmed by this long term?
We're always going to have some harm to it. There's always going to be something there. The only way to really try to begin the healing process is for everybody, first off, to let voices be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, voices are trying to be heard, and then you have, the other side trying to quell it, what have you.
Who's trying to quell?
Well, as I said, you have both sides, for run, Tony, run. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have other people saying, quit, Tony, quit.
I loved Reverend Ross Lee's comment. He said, these people are telling Tony Harp not to run. They're mad because she said they can't win. So then what are you mad about? She'll run and not win if you're so sure she can't win.
But
that
that's
was kind of funny.
But that's what I'm saying, where
yeah.
allow the process to run its course.
Yeah.
And, and use this time just to have real genuine conversations
Mhm.
about the issues that matter. And, hey, listen, what candidate is better? This is who you supported. Here's the reason why. But be able to actually have just a simple conversation, keep the lines of communication open. Where, yeah, I think that, just like you said in the beginning, I'm right, you're wrong, and I don't want to hear what you have to say, because if you're not going to agree with me completely, I don't want to hear what your rhetoric or what your dialogue is. But you're shutting that person out, and we have to understand that we are many pieces to one puzzle,
Mhm.
where none of this works if everybody does not come to the table and work together.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what we need to see in terms of bringing everybody together.
So you're hoping that'll happen after the
I'm
election?
praying that it will happen, but it's going to be primarily on whoever's going to be, our mayor.
You don't think it's more on the community?
I would say that the community definitely has a play, but I think that, I give you the example. My father was very tough on me, but what I loved about my father is that he always kept the door open for me to have conversations with him.
Mm.
And I think that as the mayor, the door always has to be open for you to have a conversation.
Okay, Tamika McCarthy says, no real friends, no real enemies in politics. Thanks for only real interests. Thanks for posting. New Haven is divided. Paul, we cannot ignore what happened. I just read an article targeting the mayor's son. The ward chair doesn't even live in that ward. She's referring to an article we had this morning about the mayor's son has for 6 years owned one and then a second rundown property that's plaguing, become drug houses, really dangerous, right across the street from a school. Just for the record, we knew about that story before the primary election. We did not run it because we didn't want to, at the last minute, do something that would sway the vote. I thought, right or wrong, that would be journalism mispractice. We concluded that not to run the article after the election would also be journalism mispractice, because this is an important issue to that community and something that really matters. And it doesn't mean the mayor's son's a bad guy. There have been other articles attacking him that we thought were unfair that we did not publish. All landlords have issues. The HARP team, the leader of HARP's election campaign, posted an anti-Semitic comment on the web about Jewish landlords. And I think all these landlords, they have some things they do well, some they don't, some are better than others. Mika says, why run it now? Because the election is not the only thing in the world. In the Hill, there is a bunch of rundown properties that have been problems for up to 6 years, and they're affecting everyone's health and safety. They're part of a bigger problem. They had to do with how the government and the community deal with blight and children going to school while their junkies dying on the property. So yes, not to run that, I would believe, would have made us very irresponsible journalists. I also think that if we had run it right before the primary, it would not have been fair. Some people would think that's wrong because they would say the public had a right to know it. We felt, let's just take some time and get to know it better and wait till the smoke clears. So, right, whatever we do, we're going to get attacked. We're just going to try to do the job the best we can. And I appreciate you for raising the point, but I knew people were going to say that. I could give you a whole long list of stories people said they're very unfair about the mayor's son and the mayor's late husband that we have not published. But to protect when people in power and their family are involved in something that affects everyday people and their lives and children and safety, and we're just not going to do that.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the reason why for
even
me,
if we exist enemies.
where I believe that the press does play an important part, and especially getting the message out, getting the wording out, especially what you want to deliver. But also, the press has the right, for stories that actually come to them. But you made the judgment call
And I
about when.
respect that people don't like it. They say APT is part of it. We've written a lot of articles about the APT Foundation. We've taken pictures of the crimes taking place right around it. We put them in this article. Someone say, well, there's demolitions. I say, yes, there are, and we put that in the headline in the main first paragraph. I would say she said it doesn't look good to still be publishing it because everyone's bruised about Tony Harp. I knew that was true, but you're damned to do if you don't. If you protect people in power from anything that doesn't look good, you're hurting your community. I think the wrong call might have been that we didn't do it before the primary, but I wanted to err on the side of not trying to swing an election through bad information at the last minute. Just newspapers do different windows. We have a longer window than others about, short of someone getting shot, we're not going to publish it in the last week. Jaywan Carter says, thank you for postponing the article. That was the right thing. Now it's time, build with community preference. And by the way, I think Matthew Harp is going to do the right thing. But one of those things was 6 years. And it's happening now, and the dead body was found across the street, and we were there on the site where we saw people in really bad condition on the property doing stuff that you don't want to have right around the kids. And so, we put it out there and people think what they think.
And that's all really what you can do. But I admire you for having the sensitivity. But it just
But
like
I
you
still
said,
knew that the hard team is basically, if you write the name, I'll give you an example. During the campaign, we had one article with 20 paragraphs about Toni Hart when she won the convention. Lovely photos of her. In the middle of the article, we had one paragraph of Justin Elicker and an unflattering picture because it captured how upset it was. And then we got flack from the Harp campaign for saying we're really biased. We gave too much attention to Justin. We had another day where his picture was twice in an article because we had a video. And that week we had literally 20 photos of Toni Harp. And we got this flack from people saying you're showing such bias. So in the end, I just said, look, we're just going to do our best. And maybe it's true there's bias. We're just going to. And Ehrlich's people early on made some, I thought, unfair allegations that we were biased against them because we'd given so much positive coverage to the mayor. And in the end, and maybe they're right. We have to listen to that because you don't always make the right decisions. I don't know that we made the right decision holding off and writing this Hill story until after the primary, but we're going to listen because we make mistakes too. And I know that people come from a good place, and I really respect the people who care enough to want us to do it right.
and as a pastor, especially in a position of leadership, where I'm always going to get criticized, no matter what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be able to live with myself.
Right.
And
in the end, you got to be able to sit in your tub and not need anything, as I.F. Stone said.
At least I can say that I've done what I felt was best at that time. Now it may not be right for some people, but I have to be able to live with myself.
And the truth is, if what you need is people to tell you they like what you do and they like you, that's ephemeral anyway. You got to live with yourself and know you did the right thing.
What
at the
they
end of the
say,
day.
to be loved by everyone is to be loved by no one.
And someone just said, let's hope the articles go after landlords who have challenges. You see, this is the kind of thing that does make me nuts. I am called anti-Semitic all the time because we write so many articles about slumlords who happen to be Jewish. We've got sent people to jail. We have written literally 40,000 words on slumlords who happen to be Jewish. We've written about Chinese American slumlords, a whole series of stories that led to 7 blighted properties changing hands. We wrote one story about a landlord connected to the mayor. And their balance is, oh, now show us you're going to write about other landlords. You see, you can't win that argument.
No,
and I'm just venting. I'm sorry. This is part of how I feel about this election.
It's all right. As I say, it's your right to vent.
Okay, let's go back. So people vent at you about the escape because Bethel Church worked with the city because there's always pressure on churches. Let's help deal with problems in the cities. You teamed up with the city that'd be an escape center that would have a new senior center built there and a new center for youth, young people to have a place to go after school or at night, and a teen homeless center that I believe volunteers from your church. People spent all night during cold snaps as a warming center. We're going to run the center. The project went awry. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent. It never got built. They discovered problems with the roof that weren't there, and there's a 15-year lease. 15-year lease. So one of our listeners, who's very critical of you about this, said, "So what's the status of that?"
So the status, and this is all nothing set in stone, where there is money set aside as of right now that's sequestered from the previous fiscal year.
From the city.
From the city.
To make repairs. Because there was problems with the roof that people didn't realize there. There's 7 flat roofs there, and there was water collecting and that kind of
Well, and that's all unofficial communication, where, I received word that, the church is responsible for the roof. And I've always stated in my unofficial capacity that we will always do what we need to do, to maintain our building. But that wasn't the original part of the project, where the roof never was really discussed. We knew there was going to be some roof work that was going to be included in the original CDBG.
Mm-hmm.
But now all of a sudden, the roof now is an issue that wasn't there when we first signed, the lease agreement. But we've always made strides to actually work with the city, to partner with the city, to see the escape project go through. And I've always have done my absolute best. With the escape, no escape, we've always done and stood by our youth in the city, where summer programming. We actually had a very fine young man, Diari Alec, who actually runs Fearless Youth Academy. He was looking for space for his summer program. We actually allowed him to house his program in our fellowship hall in our basement of our church for 2 summers in a row. The Alive program, by Dr. Johnson and a few other educators, where the Alive program was actually housed in schools for the summer. They ended that program 3 weeks prior to school opening up because schools had to get ready, for cleaning, maintenance, what have you. And Dr. Johnson felt that these kids have nowhere to go for the next 3 weeks. If our primary objective is to keep them safe, we don't have a place for them to go. Bethel has stood up and housed them for those last 3 weeks in our building. And we did not charge either organization anything.
No, separate from the whole escape thing,
Yes,
I would say that Bethel is a model congregation.
thank you. I appreciate
Preceding your time and now in your time, when I think about those women who are cooking food all through the winter, all night, and staying up till 6 in the morning, so homeless people who don't go to shelters would have a place to stay. When I think of all the community work you do, I'm glad you guys are around, and I wish
and
that more houses of worship were
well,
part of this.
my philosophy has always been, if I'm in a position to help, I'm going to help. And during the time for the escape, when it first was presented, there was an article, I believe, by your paper, where the youth were saying they have nowhere to go.
It's really sad about all the youth homelessness.
Well,
Remember when Kermit Carolina was the principal of Hill House, he started noticing that he found out that all these kids were sleeping on these other couches and no place to go at night. It's really sad
but
that they.
here's the interesting part. They're not counting in the number of homelessness. They're actually, if you're a couch surfer, you're
Right,
actually saying
right.
that
You have a home.
you have a home. But we actually did a commission report around 2014, over 600 students that were identified as being homeless,
Yeah.
not including couch surfing. And so that's the reason why we wanted to get involved in that work. And we actually applied for a city grant. This is when they did the grants for the warming center of the CSA, warming center, youth homeless shelter. We applied for 2 grants. We were awarded both grants for the warming center and for the homeless shelter, but we never received the grant for the homeless shelter because we didn't have a shelter. That was supposed to be part of the overall teen center project. So we never received that grant because there was no building to operate or house it in.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always stated we have the infrastructure. We went and actually changed laws to make sure, the age group that are able to stay in youth, where I think it was 18, we actually had to increase to 21. So we actually did some groundwork to make this actually possible. But once again, we need a building to actually house it. And if the city is able to come through with the renovations, we're more than willing to step up to the plate, seek the funding to actually run and house a program.
Okay. Well, good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Schools. We've been through another. I argue from political perspective, the schools that as much as anything to do with the really decline in black support for the mayor in this last election. In the week leading up to the election, the administration, the new superintendent she put in, had thousands of people not knowing where the kids are going to get picked up by the bus. People were mad about that. We were hearing, what should happen next? We have a new superintendent acting, Eileen Tracy, who, unlike the last bunch of people we brought in, 4th superintendent in 4 years. By the way, I see positive signs on the Board of Ed. I actually think the actual board has been doing some impressive stuff, like about dealing with this magnet school tuition issue.
Yes.
Really good outcome on that. Really smart and listening to people. Do you have hope that things will be cleaned up under Dr. Tracy, or what's going to happen?
You always have hope. I think with Dr. Eileen Tracy, what she brings to the table, her calm demeanor, just her presence. She's very strong, very sound, and the most important thing, I believe that the board respects her.
Mm-hmm.
Where
And not just the board.
well, in the community, the board, the community, they respect her, and they're willing to work with her.
So do you
in
think
terms-
she'll become the permanent superintendent?
I think that they're going to run another search and let the chips fall.
See, you know so
where they
much more
may.
about this stuff than I do. I can't imagine why they would do a search. given that we've had 4 superintendents for 4 years and tons of press about how even the person they bring in that's get attacked the months he's here, and even last time we really didn't get the first string, the people who would be the best superintendents because they don't want to come close to this. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to just hire from within someone who knows how the schools work and maybe isn't some flashy person who, wants to have some big, news stories about her doing big new things and just run the schools. Why wouldn't you want just to have someone like that in for a while?
I think Dr. Tracy buys them time.
Yeah.
Where, I think with Dr. Mayo, when he came back,
Right.
he was only supposed to serve for like 8 months, end up being like 18
14,
months.
yeah.
So I think that with Dr. Tracy buys them time to figure out what their next step is. But I think the attention has always been to start another search, a national search, and see where it goes. I think that
I guess the argument is that why not see whom you can get on national search? I would argue that sometimes that's really important, and other times it's really important to hire from within.
and I think that we do.
You can still do that. You're saying after national search.
We can still
But
do.
don't you waste time and money?
I think what hurt us, for the first search, and really what people use as a sticking point, that we did not have any internal candidates, part of the top six.
Right.
And I think now they've learned from that, where I do believe there will be some internal candidates that will get a strong look, moving forward.
Well, I don't know Dr. Tracy well, but one thing I love that she did, it's just quiet. She's changed the meeting locations to New Hallville, and the schools she did apparently a very good job of running back in the day, Jackie Robinson, getting it right out in the community. It's a good first sign.
Well, and I think now that the meetings will be held at King Robinson School.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was King Robinson.
Yes.
I apologize.
But they change it every year.
Oh, yeah, that was Jackie Robinson. Yeah, it's King Robinson.
Yeah, they change it every year in terms of where they meet for the board. So I think King Robinson is a great location, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the board does and looking forward to lending my support, whatever we need to do moving forward for the city.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing more from Reverend Stephen Cousin. As all the great work you do in New Haven. I'm sorry I vented during the show. You're the guest.
Okay. It's okay.
I don't think it was okay.
No,
I was triggered,
as I said,
and I didn't hold it.
It's your right, and you have a right to be heard.
But who wants to listen to that? Okay. Anyway, I'm hearing a lot of good comments coming in about Dr. Tracy. I'm optimistic. Despite our bruised feelings in this divisive time in election, we get past them.
And she's a preacher too.
On. Oh yeah,
when I say
like a preacher.
Yes.
Like a preacher.
Yes.
Yeah, where she preach?
I heard her pray. I think she serves as a minister. I could be mistaken, but I heard her pray at an event, and when she prayed, it's just a calming demeanor around the entire room, where I knew that when she became the acting superintendent, if she can pray the way she does, lead, we're going to be okay.
All right. Well, we're going to be okay. At least we were okay today, having the Reverend Stephen Cousin on Dateline New Haven WHHF. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much,
some
Paul.
wisdom with us. Thanks to Brian Slattery filling in for the On Vacation, Harry Jarose, the miracle man behind the controls. Thank you to everyone who posted comments. I'm sorry there were too many for me to then start reading, but I always appreciate it. And thanks for keeping us honest too, folks, and speaking out when you think we're not doing right. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.